There's a certain quiet that settles in after the holidays. The dishes are finally done, the lights are still up, and the house smells faintly of cinnamon, pine, and whatever candle you forgot to blow out last night. The rush is over, the laughter has faded into softer conversations, and for the first time in weeks, you can actually hear yourself think. I always love this stretch between Christmas and New Year's, when time feels a little blurry and no one's quite sure what day it is. It's like the world collectively exhales. On the counter, there's usually a bottle I've been saving, not for the holiday itself, but for after. For this quiet moment when the noise has passed and there's finally space to notice what the year became. I never open it right away. It's not about the wine. It's about the waiting, the pause, the patience that makes something taste better just because it wasn't rushed. Winemaking taught me the lesson long before I realized how much it applied to life. You can mix and measure and bottle all you want, but the real transformation happens in the waiting, in the dark, in the stillness, in the space between effort and outcome. And honestly, that's what this time of year feels like to me. The in-between, the quiet part where things settle and you realize not everything needs to be started right away. Because some things, like a good bottle of wine, just need time to breathe. Welcome to the Maker's Table Holiday Special Series. Today we're talking about what happens when you stop rushing to start fresh and let what you've made rest, because the bottle you want to open in January is already becoming something worth savoring. Welcome back to the Maker's Table Holiday Special Series, part of the Third Shift Crafts podcast. If you've been following along this season, we've built, cooked, poured, and gathered. We've talked about what making teaches us, patience, presence, and how to find meaning in the small, slow things. And now, as the holidays wind down and the year starts to fade, we find ourselves in that quiet, in-between space. The gifts are open, the meals are finished, and the pace finally drops to something that feels human again. It's the perfect time to talk about waiting, and what happens in the pause. For me, that pause feels a lot like the days after bottling a new batch of wine. The hard work is done, everything's measured, sealed, and stored away. You can't rush it now, all you can do is wait. And in that stillness, something starts to happen. The sharp edges soften, the flavors start to blend. Time does what you never could. That's what this week between holidays feels like to me. Quiet fermentation. We spend so much of the year doing, building, hustling, checking boxes, but this one little window, this soft space between December and January, that's where real transformation happens. You can almost feel the shift in the air. The lights are still twinkling, but the pressure's gone. The noise has faded, and what's left is reflection. Maybe you're looking around your house, seeing the half-unwrapped gifts or the projects waiting for attention, and you realize not everything needs to be finished right now. That's the same patience winemaking teaches. You don't bottle a batch one week and drink it the next. You let it rest. You trust that it's still changing, even when it looks still. And I think the same is true for us. We put so much pressure on ourselves this time of year to reinvent everything by January 1st. New goals, new plans, new versions of ourselves, as if all that transformation can happen overnight. But maybe this year doesn't need a resolution. Maybe it just needs a little room to breathe. Because the truth is, the next version of you is already forming. Everything you've learned, built, cooked, created, and endured this year, it's all still fermenting inside you, turning into something richer, deeper, more layered. You don't need to throw it all out and start from scratch. You just need to give it time to settle. That's the lesson of the bottle. The waiting season is not the wasted season. So as we head into the last days of the year, I hope you give yourself permission to pause, to rest in the quiet, to look at what you've already made in your work, your home, your heart, and realize it's still becoming something beautiful. Because January will come soon enough, and when it does, you'll be ready to open the bottle. Not just the literal one, but the symbolic one too. The part of your life that's been quietly maturing while you've been tending, resting, and trusting the process. So let's talk about that today, about patience, and what it means to wait well. Because not everything good happens in motion. Some of the best things, the most flavorful, the most meaningful, only come after you let them breathe. When you're making wine, there's a point where everything goes quiet. The fermentation slows down, the bubbles fade, and for a while, it looks like nothing's happening. The temptation is to poke at it, to check, to stir, to tweak. But every winemaker learns the same thing eventually. The quiet part is where the magic happens. That's the waiting season. The one where time becomes the ingredient. When I first started making wine, that part drove me crazy. I wanted to rush the process, to see it, to measure it, to know it was working. But every time I rushed it, I ruined it. The flavor never had the chance to deepen. It was too young, too sharp, too unsettled. And I think life works the same way. We all go through seasons where it feels like nothing's happening, when we're working hard but can't see the results yet, when the future feels like it's on pause. It's uncomfortable. We start questioning whether the effort was worth it. But most of the time, that's just the quiet stage, the one where everything we've been pouring into finally starts to blend. Growth rarely looks exciting when it's happening. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it just feels like exhaustion. But that doesn't mean it's wasted. It means it's working. The same way a bottle needs time to balance, to let all its separate parts become one, we need time to settle after seasons of effort. Time to let what we've learned sink in. Time to let our next direction become clear before we take the next step. It's easy to forget that when the world's shouting, "New year, new you," there's so much noise around reinvention that we forget refinement is just as powerful. You don't have to reinvent everything every January. You can just let what you've been building quietly mature. Maybe this year you learned to slow down. Maybe you found your rhythm in a craft or a new kind of patience. Maybe you went through something that changed you, not in a loud, visible way, but in a way that makes you softer, steadier, and a little more sure of yourself. That's what the waiting season gives us: depth, the kind that can't be rushed or replicated. There's something holy about that kind of waiting. When you stop trying to make things happen and just trust that they are, that what you've started will find its way, that you've done enough and now it's time to let the work breathe. In winemaking, that's called resting on the lees. It's when the wine sits on the sediment, the leftover bits from fermentation, and instead of filtering it out too soon, you let it stay there, because those leftovers add body and character to the final flavor. Life has its lees too, the pieces we'd rather leave behind, the hard seasons, the mistakes, the lessons that stung a little. But if you let them rest long enough, they add something beautiful to who you become. A little more depth, a little more warmth, a little more you. So if this season feels quiet or uncertain, if you're not sure what's next, maybe that's not something to fix. Maybe that's just the waiting doing its work. You don't have to fill the silence. You don't have to stir the barrel. You just have to trust the process you already started. Because the waiting season isn't the empty space between what was and what's next. It's the bridge. The part where everything blends together before you can see the final shape. And when you finally open that bottle, literal or not, you'll realize it was worth the wait. I think one of the hardest parts about this time of year is the feeling that we're supposed to start over. Like everything that came before it was just a warm-up. But that's not true. You've already been doing the work. Maybe it didn't look like the kind of progress you can post about. Maybe it wasn't flashy or obvious, but somewhere in the middle of all those quiet, ordinary days, between the projects that went right and the ones that didn't, something was changing. You were learning, refining, aging into the next version of yourself without even realizing it. That's how wine works too. Once it's bottled, it looks finished, but inside, it's still alive, still transforming. All those tiny reactions are happening under the surface, creating flavor, depth, and balance. And that's you right now, sitting in this in-between space, looking back on everything you've done this year and maybe not seeing all the growth that's still unfolding. But it's there, even if it's not visible yet. We live in a world that rewards results. We love the finished project, the reveal, the success story, the after picture. But the truth is, the most meaningful changes are the ones we don't see until later. They're the quiet shifts, the better boundaries, the softer reactions, the way you trust yourself a little more than you used to. Those things count. They're the proof that the work has already been happening, not out loud, but within. And just like that bottle of wine, your life doesn't reset every January. It carries forward. Every experience, every lesson, every bit of effort you've poured in, nothing is wasted. Even the seasons that felt like struggle are part of the process. I've opened bottles that didn't taste right the first few months. Too sharp, too thin, too early. But given time, a few months, maybe a year, those same bottles turned into something I couldn't have imagined when I first corked them. That's how time works. It softens what feels harsh. It fills in what felt empty. So before you start writing your next set of goals or resolutions, take a minute to acknowledge the work you've already done. Because I promise you, it's more than you think. Maybe this was the year you built something new. Maybe it was the year you let something go. Maybe it was the year you stopped saying yes to things that drained you, or finally said yes to something that scared you. All of that is growth. We tend to measure progress by what we can show, by finished projects, milestones, numbers, but I've learned that the work that really matters doesn't always look productive. Sometimes it looks like resting. Sometimes it looks like saying not yet. Sometimes it just looks like trying again tomorrow. That's what makes the waiting season so important. It gives you space to see that you've already done enough. In winemaking, you don't keep adding ingredients once it's bottled. You let what's already there deepen. You trust that you mixed it right and you stop tinkering. You let the chemistry work itself out. That's a hard thing to do in life, to stop tinkering, to stop thinking you have to fix or improve everything right away. But sometimes that's exactly what allows things to mature the way they're meant to. Because here's the truth. The next good thing for you might not require more effort. It might just require more time. The patience to let what you've already built settle. The courage to believe it's enough. The grace to rest without guilt. You don't need to start fresh every year. You just need to carry forward what's worth keeping and give it space to get better. Think of it like that bottle on the counter. You did the work to make it. You prepared it, sealed it, stored it. Now it's becoming something on its own. That's not passivity. That's partnership. You did your part. Now you let time do its part. So as you look ahead to January, don't dismiss everything you've already poured in. The patience, the learning, the resilience, those are the ingredients aging quietly in the background. And when you open that next season, you'll taste all of it. The work you've already done isn't waiting for you to start again. It's waiting for you to realize it's already working. There's something special about finally opening a bottle you've been saving. You ease out the cork slowly, not wanting to rush it. You tilt the glass, pour carefully, watch the color, and then wait a few seconds before taking that first sip. It's a small ritual, but it feels sacred because you're tasting time. You're tasting what patience made possible. And I think that's how we should move into the new year. Not with a sprint, but with a pour. Because pouring isn't about speed, it's about intention. It's about slowing down enough to appreciate what's inside and making sure there's enough to share. That's what I've learned through both making and living. What's been developing quietly inside you isn't meant to stay bottled up. It's meant to be poured forward into your work, your relationships, your community, and your own sense of purpose. We spend so much time trying to get to the next thing that we forget to notice what's already ready, what's already matured enough to be shared. You've been doing the inner fermenting all year long, through mistakes, through learning, through growth, and now you get to pour that out a little. Not all at once, not in a rush, but slowly, generously, intentionally. That first pour of a new bottle always feels symbolic to me. It's like a reminder that good things are meant to be enjoyed, not hoarded, and that joy multiplies when it's shared. That's how I want to enter the new year, with an open bottle, a steady hand, and a willingness to pour what I've learned into something new. Because pouring forward doesn't mean starting over. It means continuing, expanding, releasing what's ready. It means taking everything you've aged, the wisdom, the patience, the grit, and letting it flow into the next season. And it doesn't have to be a big dramatic act. It can be as simple as deciding to show up with more calm, to give a little more grace to yourself and to others, to share what you've learned instead of keeping it quiet out of fear or doubt. That's the heart of handmade living. What we make with our hands eventually teaches us how to live with our hearts. We build, we wait, we refine, and then we give it away. When you pour a glass for someone else, you're not just sharing wine, you're sharing time. The hours you spent making it, the patience it took to wait, the care it took to preserve it. And when you pour from what's inside you, your energy, your knowledge, your kindness, it's the same thing. You're giving people the gift of what you took time to become. That's a beautiful kind of generosity. So maybe that's the invitation for this next season. Don't rush to fill your glass. Focus on what you're pouring out. What do you want to share more of this year? More creativity, more stillness, more joy in the process instead of the product? Whatever it is, start small. One pour at a time. You don't empty the bottle in one go. You savor it, you pace it, you make it last. That's how life should feel too. Not one big rush to empty yourself out, but a series of small, meaningful moments that remind you how full you already are. And here's the thing, just like every bottle tastes a little different, every season of life does too. Some years are bold, full-bodied, confident. Others are quieter, softer, still developing. Neither is better. They're just different expressions of the same process. That's what I love about winemaking as a metaphor for living. It honors the pace of things. It celebrates waiting, savoring, and trusting that flavor takes time. So as you move toward the new year, maybe skip the resolutions this time. Instead, ask yourself, what's ready to be poured forward? What have you been holding onto that's finally ready to be shared? Maybe it's a new project or a creative spark, or a story that's been sitting quietly in your heart. Maybe it's just more patience, more presence in the everyday. Whatever it is, pour it slowly, pour it intentionally, and pour it with gratitude for the waiting that made it possible. Because what's inside you right now, the strength, the resilience, the hope, it's already become something worth savoring. You don't have to fix it or filter it or start over. You just have to let it breathe. And when you do, I think you'll find that the year ahead won't feel like a blank slate at all. It'll feel like a continuation of something you've been crafting all along, something steady, rich, and beautifully yours. Every year when the holidays fade and the new one starts to creep closer, I find myself wanting to rush ahead, to make plans, to fix things, to fill the space with something new. But the older I get, the more I realize the quiet days between what was and what's next are some of the most important ones. They're the exhale before the inhale, the silence before the song, the part of the process that never looks productive but always leads somewhere good. And I think that's what wine teaches best, that what's becoming doesn't need your constant attention, it needs your trust. Because the beauty of anything handmade, whether it's a project, a meal, or a life, is that it doesn't need to be rushed to be meaningful. The work you did this year isn't gone. It's resting. It's deepening. It's turning into something you'll be grateful for later, even if you can't quite taste it yet. I know it's easy to feel like you have to start the new year with a fresh plan or a bold move, but maybe what you really need is to carry forward what's already working, to notice what feels right and protect it, to stop looking for the next big thing and instead let what's already here mature. Because patience isn't passive. It's participation in the slowest, most powerful part of creation, the part that trusts time to do what it does best. If you've ever opened the bottle too early, you know the difference. It's not bad, it's just not ready yet. And if you've ever waited long enough, you know that first sip tastes like reward. So maybe this year, the goal isn't to reinvent everything. Maybe it's just to wait well, to show up for the slow things, your growth, your creativity, your peace, with a little more curiosity and a lot less urgency. And when you finally get to that moment, when something you've been working toward quietly unfolds, take a second to really taste it, to savor what time, patience, and intention made possible. That's the moment when you realize it was never about rushing to get here. It was about learning how to enjoy what here feels like. So as you move into January, don't feel like you have to burst out of the gate. Instead, ease into it. Light a candle, clean your space, write down 1 or 2 things you want to nurture, not 10. Pour yourself something slow and sit with the fact that you made it through another year. That's something worth toasting to all on its own. And when you do finally open that bottle, literal or metaphorical, I hope you don't rush to finish it. I hope you pour it slowly, share it, savor it, and let it remind you that you've already made something worth enjoying. Because that's the real gift of the maker's life. You learn that everything meaningful, whether it's built, cooked, written, or poured, takes time. And that's what makes it beautiful. So here's to the bottle you'll want to open in January. To patience, to slow growth, to believing that what's becoming still has time to bloom. Thanks for joining me today at the Maker's Table. As the year winds down and the noise fades, I hope you find a little stillness for yourself. The kind that doesn't need a plan or a deadline, just time. Because the best things we make, in the shop, in the kitchen, or in our lives, always take a little longer than we expect. And that's okay. That's what makes them real. So let this be a reminder that what you've been working toward is still unfolding, even when you can't see it. You don't need to start over, you just need to let it breathe. Next Saturday, we'll wrap up this holiday series with What Making Taught Me This Year, a reflection on the lessons, surprises, and small moments that shape 2025 and what they're teaching us about what comes next. Until then, take your time, savor what you've made, and remember, the best things in life, like the best wine, are always crafted by hand and rooted in home.